Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Billy Wilder Theater, home of public programs for the UCLA Film and Television Archive. I am May HaDuong, director of the UCLA Film and Television Archive. Thank you for joining us for the opening night of the Archive's 12-night series, Science Fiction Against the Margins, part of PST Art, Art and Science Collide, presented by the Getty. All of the archive screening in the Wilder are free thanks to a gift from an anonymous donor, and we're grateful to them for their support and the Hammer Museum's partnership. The archive would also like to thank all of our community partners on tonight's screening: Sundance Institute, UCLA International Institute, UCLA Alumni Association, and the UCLA School of the Arts and Architecture. Science Fiction Against the Margins received outstanding support from the Getty's PST Art Initiative, a 4-year grant project that combines research and exhibition. This year's initiative, Art and Science Collide, features work made by more than 800 artists representing by over 70 institutions across Southern California that explore the connection and possibility between the arts and sciences. This PST, UCLA has been awarded the most grants to any one institution, including exhibitions here at the Hammer Museum, also the Fowler Museum, the UCLA Art Sci Center, and the UCLA Arts Conditional Studio. The archive's previous PST projects have included the LA Rebellion exhibition as part of Art in LA and Recuerdos de un Cine en Español, Latin America Cinema in Los Angeles as part of PST LA in 2017. We are thrilled to be part of Art and Science Collide. SFAM, as we have been affectionately calling it for the last few years, is a special collaboration between the Archive and the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television in creating not only this series, but also producing an anthology of original scholarship by UCLA faculty and related course offerings. In 2019, Professor Chon Noriega pitched the idea of SFAM to the archive staff, and 4 years later, we are here today. A project like Science Fiction Against the Margins requires lots of thanks, so I want to thank our colleagues, past and present, from the School of Theater, Film, and Television, Dean Brian Kite, Professor Amy Villarejo, Chair of the Department of Film, Television, and Digital Media, and the faculty contributors to the anthology, which we'll hear more about in a moment. I'd like to thank the generous PST Getty team, especially Heather McDonald, Melissa Lowe, Lou Spriggs, and Zachary Kaplan, as well as the director of the Getty Foundation, Joan Weinstein. The archive is part of UCLA Library, and our collective efforts, creatively and technical expertise, are reflected in the many outstanding individuals listed in the catalog that you have hopefully in your hand. I want to thank all of the teams who help make our programming possible, including the teams in communications and marketing, our digital lab, collection services, programming, the business office, theater staff, and of course, our fearless leader, the Norman and Armina Powell University librarian, Athena N. Jackson, who I think is here. Hi. Let's give all of them a round of applause. Now I have the pleasure to introduce the curatorial team, Chon Noriega, Nicole Ucedo, and Maya Montañez Smukler, to talk more about the project.
I was wondering where my catalog went, and I realized that May took it. Good evening and welcome to our opening. This is so exciting. We have worked on this so long. We began the kind of sit-down work with this at the beginning of the pandemic, and that really kind of changed a lot of our worldview and really put an emphasis on the importance of media. The Science Fiction Against the Margins started as a way of trying to look at another kind of cinema. We're very familiar with the Hollywood-style science fiction that's used not just in Hollywood, but around the world, in which there is a good and a bad, and there's the resolution of that in very melodramatic terms that ultimately go down to not the structures within which conflict emerges, but the individuals, mostly in many cases the family. We didn't want to challenge that. It exists, and to try to replace it only reasserts a new center. And so we decided to turn in the other direction and push back against margins, and to not put forth a central vision of a certain type of cinema, but to allow the diversity of filmmaking happening around the world, whether supported by a nation state or independent, art-based, movement-based, indigenous, collaborative international productions. You'll see all of those in the course of this series. Now, going along with the series is an anthology of original as well as republished scholarship. When I say republished, that sounds kind of like recycling in the negative sense. We are actually publishing the articles that sustained us, that helped focus us, that Maya and I used when we taught a graduate class as a way of testing out the idea with some of our students. So the important thing about this book is it's not a mere reflection by scholars of this series. We think of the book and the film series as more of a binary star. And that's two stars that are circling around each other. The series does the work it can do in a space like this, and we hope that you really you enjoy that and that it stimulates you in terms of what is possible through cinema and relative to science and art. And the book is more of a critical reflection that is really at its core the work that the faculty that we worked with in cinema and media studies, having followed what we were doing and being part of that on the curatorial side, helped identify where the scholarship needed to go. And we're really excited to bring that work forth and to put it alongside the work that we all found very illuminating in terms of different ways of thinking about cinema. Some films, for example, we're showing La Jetée, they've been written about a long time, but it's only recently that the role of violence and colonialism is being drawn out of that film. I want to end by thanking our contributors who are faculty in or affiliated with cinema and media studies, including some professors from information studies and professor and theater. And if you could just raise your hands here, I think many of you are here. Just a big round of applause. Come on, Chris, raise your hand. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Wow, I really can't believe we're here today. I wasn't part of the archive before this project, so I really want to thank Maya and Paul and Chon for bringing me on, and it's been such a wild journey, which I think you'll see in these 12 programs. So in addition to the contributions by the faculty collaborators, we would like to thank the series contributing programmers, Paul Malcolm, who is here tonight as well, the archive senior public programmer, and Mark Quigley, the archive's John H. Mitchell television curator, who has programmed an amazing night of Afrofuturist television episodes and music films, including performances by A Tribe Called Quest and Gil Scott-Heron. You do not want to miss that. It's on October 27th. Yes. Additional thanks to KJ Rolf Miller and Amanda Salazar for their contributions to the program over these past 4 years, and I think they're also here tonight, so we could clap for them. It was important to the project to include more than only feature films. Incorporating short films and television allowed us to explore the work of even more filmmakers who are experimenting with moving image and the genre conventions of sci-fi. These short films are in many ways the pillars of their programs. Tomorrow night, we screen Watama Bodomo's short film Afronauts alongside the earliest example of a science fiction film, George Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. These screened before the feature film The Science of Fictions. On November 15, in our Seeing is Believing program, we screened 4 very varied experimental films, including Stranger Baby, Fever Dream, To Infinity and Beyond, and Tribulation 99. And these screened before Korean action sci-fi feature film Save the Green Planet. It's going to be a really wild night, and these are just a few of the short films we're including in the series. So with that, I'll pass it to Maya.
Echoing Chon and Nicole, it's been an incredible 4 years, starting with the pandemic and watching so many science fiction films that in so many ways mirrored what we were experiencing for real. So I really feel grateful that we had this project to sort of ground us during a really incredible, extraordinary time. So thank you all for being here tonight to share with us our opening of Science Fiction Against the Margins, which is 12 nights of programming starting, of course, this weekend, running through December 14th. We are fortunate over the course of the series to be joined in conversation by many filmmakers whose films we're showing, who will be talking about their work in the context of science fiction. So just to highlight some of those, of course, tonight's guest, artist in UCLA, Professor Cauleen Smith, who will be joined in conversation with Professor Shelleen Greene, who is also one of our contributors to our anthology. On October 18th, we have the Restoration World premiere of Sticky Fingers of Time and a Q&A with filmmaker Hilary Broger and an intro by Jillian Borders, who's our head of preservation, who will talk a little bit about that preservation project. On October 19th, AI, Mama, and Neptune Frost will be joined by the filmmakers Saul Williams, Anicia Uziman, and Asaka Lin. On November 3rd, we're having a triple feature, 2 features, Advantageous with filmmaker Jennifer Fang, Sleep Dealer with Alex Rivera, and Robots of Brixton, introduced by Kibwe Tavares. And then our special, one of our other contributing authors, Kathleen McHugh, who is here, yes, we'll be doing a Q&A on November 22nd with filmmaker Denise Goulet and her film Night Raiders. And then our series will close on December 14th with an evening with filmmaker Larissa Sansor. So please check out the calendar, which is on our website. Grab a program, grab a postcard. We really hope to see you at more of our screenings, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just a note, we're showing the shorts first. I will then quickly introduce our guests, then we'll have a 10-minute break, and then invite you to come back for the Q&A, and then to round off the evening with Space is the Place. The break will be after the, clearly.
Start over again.
Okay, here, you do it, because I'm not part of programming, so I get this one.
Okay. Maya's going to come back, introduce Cauleen and Shelleen, then they'll have a conversation on stage. We'll have a 10-minute intermission, and then we'll end with Space is the Place.
What happens at Last Angel?
That's part, it's a short. Okay.
It's been
All right.
a long 4 years. Thank
Yeah,
you.
enjoy.
First of all, thank you, Maya, for the introduction, and everyone for joining us tonight, the opening night of Science Fiction Against the Margins. And of course, Cauleen, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you traveled to join for the Q&A, and I'm very excited to have the conversation, especially starting our program with Hello. And I guess I wanted to start with maybe a conversation about Hello and how it fits into, I guess, Afrofuturism as a kind of way of thinking about cultural production, Black cultural production that engages questions of futurity, of liberation, but very much of the present, talking about present conditions through the imaginary.
That film came about because I was actually I was commissioned to make a procession in New Orleans. So it was actually the commission's interest and intentions had more to do with a kind of ongoing kind of cultural practice of processions, Mardi Gras, things like that, Carnival in the Caribbean. And I'm thinking of New Orleans as the Caribbean, which it is in many respects. But when I got there, I was just like, that's just a ridiculous thing for a kid who grew up in the suburbs of Sacramento to do, is to like go to New Orleans and like try and do what they're already doing at this like incredibly sophisticated level. And every time I go to New Orleans, I would try to connect with Kalamu Yasalam, who is an amazing writer and thinker, and wrote some of my favorite short stories, but like science fiction short stories. I thought I think there's something significant about the fact that these really innovative short stories written in the middle of the 20th century came out of a thinker from New Orleans, not necessarily New York, or like as the film sort of centers everything in sort of New York, Detroit, like that. But the South, New Orleans in particular, contributes a great deal to Birmingham, Alabama, is where Sun Ra is from. You know what I mean? So this idea of like where would Black people be thinking about futurity in the most urgent and desperate way? Of course, it would come from this region, and I think Okay, that's a long-winded setup to say. Then I just didn't want to do that procession, but I did want to move through the city. History, like the history in New Orleans, is multi-layered, like deep in the sediment and in the concrete and in the trees growing. It's everywhere. It's in the air. So I wanted to move through the city to sort of mark that and mark sites where Black music in particular is very indebted to New Orleans at different stages in time, from like a tuba funk beat to like a particular kind of trumpet trill to a lion's roar or an elephant stomp. So all of those things are what we're thinking about. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that like this idea of futurity really naturally comes out of places that have deep history.
Right, right. And particularly, I mean, this film was made in 2014, but it also is sort of marking, the catastrophe of Hurricane Katrina. So it's a post-Hurricane Katrina film. And I was wondering if you could talk about that in relation to Afrofuturism and this question of, these sort of maybe post-apocalyptic landscapes,
Yeah.
the question of alienation that I think, comes through in Hello in many ways.
No, yeah, thanks for asking that, because that was what I meant. I was trying to get there, which is the arrival at Close Encounters of the Third Kind as the kind of musical thread that wove all the sites together, came out of returning. I'd been in New Orleans in 2007, which was just 2 years after the waters. That was truly apocalyptic. And then 7 years later, I couldn't figure out where I was, because the city actually had recovered, but in a particular way that I found really alarming. Like, I thought I would be able to reassemble my crew, who are all like people who had moved back to New Orleans very urgently. They're from the lower ninth, and but they're like, it's too expensive, so they didn't even live in their own city anymore. I was like walking down a street, a little bit lost. I found a cafe, and then I was sitting there for half an hour before I realized I'd been there before, but it was a totally different place. And I couldn't find even Kalamu, who I normally would like go see right away. I had to drive like an hour outside of town to go see him. He wasn't living there anymore. Too expensive. And then when I was casually talking with people, everyone was kind of talking about how they were made to feel like aliens in their own city by all of these really well-intentioned newcomers who were coming to rebuild and refurbish and take advantage of cheap real estate, So they were, and one, I remember someone literally said, you can't even really say hello because people jump. Wow. It's like, and it's my neighborhood. Like, they're in my neighborhood. Like, you know what I mean? Right. So that's where this idea of Close Encounters came from. It's really the only Spielberg film I can watch. I think it's his best film. And the core of this film, really classic science fiction trope, is that there are these aliens who keep kind of like swooping in and going boop 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 boop, and they're literally saying hello through math and sound. Right. And the humans being what we are, think this is like an incursion, an aggressive incursion, and they gear up for war. They're really, really ready for war.
Right.
Um, until like the mothership drops, and then very deliberately, carefully, artfully teaches them math, and it says this is we're like this sound is this letter, you simple little bug, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like and I thought that's kind of the way black citizens in New Orleans are having to operate,
Right.
like in this, like with the enormous patience and gravitas for people who think that they already know what's going on, you know.
Right. Oh, that's incredible. And I had sent you an earlier message talking about avant-garde jazz music, and you have like these wonderful pieces that are dealing with jazz music, particularly, of course, with Sun Ra. I'm thinking of the work you did in Chicago, another urban space in which you had the marching band and sort of the refrain of space is the place. But I want to really talk about maybe music in this because you sort of use John Williams' refrain, but then there's a kind of improvisation, right? That is, I think, also kind of technology, right? That I think brings a sort of science fiction to this in terms of the ways in which it becomes a mode of riffing, communication, and just talking about being in a place, right?
Yeah, and processing really. So, the music director who rounded up all of these incredible, truly incredible, some of which whom are legends, they're great musicians, for me, was the one who translated this. Like said, oh, this director wants you to play these 5 notes, and then I got all these phone calls coming at me. So GAFCC. Okay, so why? Okay, you know what I mean? Like these really interesting questions about like what they could do with it. And I was like, I want you to. Those are 5 notes in a sequence, and I'm hoping you can do something with it. And they're like, oh, okay. So basically, this idea of processing, almost like algorithmically, each individual musician working with the same material, but finding out like really, really instantly. I mean, they all said to me, "Oh yeah, I started just like finding these intervals, and then I found myself writing a song.
Wow.
Like I found like several of them were like, oh, I think I got a song out of this, and it was just through this sort of like processing, which is a kind of particular practice in improvisation when you understand sort of like the dimensions of your craft so well that you can put something into that process and produce something like really, really almost like algorithmically spontaneously, you know what I mean? Which is what each of those musicians was doing, to the point where they took them so far out being this expression from Chicago. When you're really experimenting, you're out. They took the 5 notes so far out that I had to ask them, like, actually, I do need you to play the 5 notes, because they were finding the intervals in between the notes, like, you know what I mean, which was like actually splendid and wonderful. And the one, the gentleman in the turquoise shirt who is particularly rebellious. Like, hey, literally, that cut was like, I left that in because I was just looking at him like, we've had this conversation before. So he like wraps it up and then just plays the 5 notes. Like, at the end, he's like, all right, you got what you wanted. So it was like kind of wonderful to watch each of them process that material.
Definitely. And I guess, in terms of thinking about music in your work, I wanted to maybe see if we can make connections between the other screenings, Ulysses Jenkins, Planet X, and of course, Acomfra's The Last Angel of History. I mean, that is almost 30 years ago.
It's
And
wild to watch it.
yeah, and it's still so relevant. I was like finding like the connections between your work in 2014 and then Professor Jenkins's work in 2006. And I was wondering, how does it feel to sort of watch it again? And my second question is sort of Sun Ra. If you can tell me, he's iconic. I mean, he's foundational. He's a thread that I think connects all of you, and this Afrofuturist imaginary. And maybe you could reflect a little bit on his continued significance.
Oh, Sunra. Sunra is the thread through like all of it. I feel, even though I think that the proposal that Lee Scratch Perry and George Clinton are and Sun Ra are kind of like a trinity, I agree with that. But in terms of what's threaded through all of the musicians and writers and thinkers in that film, I think Sun Ra is a kind of clear link. And even like quite personally, like Greg Tate's dear to me, and like really mentored me through learning about Sun Ra's work. And quite ironically, before I'd seen this film before I met my art gallery dealer in Chicago, John Corbett, who's the white dude in the desert talking about like the academic scholar. Who like this is 2006 when this is made, or
The Last Angel?
1996. So in like 2016 starts representing me.
Wow.
It's wild, like really wild, because I'd seen this film many times, and it wasn't until he mentioned, oh yeah, when John Copeland wanted me to be in that, I was like, that was you. You know what I mean? Like I was just never put it together. So on a personal level, that's like kind of amazing to watch, and wonderful to see Greg. But I think in terms of Sun Ra's influence, the thing that's so interesting about him is that he wasn't just a musician. He was also a writer. He also had like a real relationship to material culture, which is clear in the way that he dressed himself and his band.
Right.
And there for me was so much to learn about how to produce work in a universe that is also a universe that's made for others, which is very much what Sun Ra was always trying to do with his orchestra, with the interactive performing, with the poetry, with all of it, with the optics,
Right. Wonderful. And I guess, I do want to turn it over to the audience, maybe one or two questions, but I guess, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your current work, Sojourner. We had an opportunity to see that film and to think about how you continue to work within Afrofuturism or even the genre science fiction, and how it maybe continues to animate your work, your thinking.
Well, I mean, I think, movies and sci-fi are meant to be, because so much of when you're thinking about galactic cosmological ideas has to do with time. And cinema handles time like nothing else. And so to me that is I guess at the core of like my real interest in oh my God, I forgot the question. I'm so sorry, Shelleen. What did you ask me?
I guess, thinking
I'm so
about...
sorry. I just got off a plane. I'm so sorry. I'll do better.
Thinking about how, I guess, perhaps the Afrofuturism, as you once called, I think, a conceptual framework, still functions in your work, in your body of work. And I was just thinking of Sojourner, which you filmed over in Joshua Tree, right?
I
Noah
mean,
Purefoy's.
It's funny. Maybe I need to rewatch the film, but I really wasn't thinking about Afrofuturism when I made that film. But I think Afrofuturism, as I understand it, which is I do not think is a kind of popular understanding, is I do think Afrofuturism is thinking about the past and thinking about the experience of blackness as one of having an estrangement with the notion of the human, and having to look towards other modes of existence, other forms of beings, from machines and technology, animals, plants, etc., for a different kind of logics for survival and liberation. And so I'm always thinking about those things, but I'm just... I mean, I hope I'm much less interested in the kind of cosplay aspects of Afrofuturism as it's sort of expressed now. That going into outer space is actually something that we do right here. I mean, listening to Derek May Man, that guy's brain. Whoa. You know what I mean? Like he kept astral projecting like crazy. Um, that's something that we're always doing here. So and so that's just the tactic that I used to structure Sojourner, which was dealing with three different women in three different times and places. And that's what I was bringing up cinemas because movies can do that. That's what a film can do with natural logics. Like you don't have to force this jump. You don't have to explain that you're going to jump. You can just jump.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sure. And I'd like to maybe, if anyone has questions or would like to join the conversation. There's one hand in the back, and I don't know if we have someone who's going around.
Hello. Oh. Hello. So in the film, George Clinton said he pictured black people in space, like with in a Cadillac, kind of chilling. So what do you picture black people in space looking like?
Well, I mean, they're in space. They're in, and I'm obsessed with black astronauts. Obsessed. And their research and their reasons for being there and the things they do when they come back down and the things they say. And I think astronauts. I wish they had a bigger social platform. But I believe that like they're actually kept away from us because they all go up there and look at the planet and then come back and say, "What are we doing? Like, stop all this. This is a little rock in space, y'all." That's what they all say. And I think that that message, that's not like the military industrial complex space colonization message that that's not useful. So when I think about black people in space, I think about people who have an embodied and deep and profound understanding of the fact that this is our spaceship.
Yes.
That that this planet keeps us alive. That we don't save the planet enables us to be. And I think that becomes more clear the further away from this planet that you get.
Wonderful. Thank you. Some more questions? Yes.
Had any of your musicians from Bill seen those encounters?
Had any of the musicians seen it? Yeah. No, which I thought was crazy. I was sending them YouTube links of like the very last scene, where the mothership lands and the whole orchestral thing. And I think that's actually what really inspired them. And Shelleen had asked if, like, I thought John Williams was inspired by the avant-garde, and I don't know that, but I do know that it seemed to me that after I sent the YouTube link, the musicians came back with these really, really interesting compositions. So I think they were responding. I think it was a conversation, you know what I mean? But no, they hadn't.
That's funny, because I thought the guy in the kind of turquoise shirt was like, because in the film they start very analytically.
Right.
They're talking about quavers and intervals and everything, and then it just takes over.
Right.
And does its whole improv.
Yes.
Thing, but then ends on the five, just very.
Yes.
Just like,
and the bass with the tuba, like.
With the tuba.
Yes.
Exactly what he did in his solo stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and same with the contrabassoon, who could hit that very low note that starts to sound like a purr. Like he really did that too. Yeah.
Okay, I think we could take maybe one more question. Oh, we have one in the back, sir.
I wanted to ask if I came kind of late, so I apologize if this is something that was already covered. But what is your, if you have one, a personal connection with Octavia Butler and or her work?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been reading Octavia Butler's books since she started writing them, and because I was a sci-fi nerd, so you just go to the sci-fi section of the bookstore and you look for something, and they always have these very strange, covers. But if you read the description, I remember the first one I bought was, oh God, I can't remember the title, but it's about the aliens and the symbiotic relationship.
Xenogenesis.
Thank you,
trilogy,
and
yes.
and the character's name is like Ghanaian or something, and I was like, huh. So then I cracked open the book, and I was like, I think this is about a black person, and so I bought it, and then I was like, I just hunting for her books, which were actually so hard to find all the way into the aughts, and now, thank goodness, they're not.
Right. Oh, that's such a great trilogy. Thank you for asking about Octavia Butler. I mean, she appears here in the Last Angel of
The
History.
only woman.
Yes. And very powerful. I mean, some people are no longer with us, but their work is. And I think Octavia Butler has also sort of been part of this sort of new, circulation or popularity of Afrofuturism within the last 10 years, I think.
Absolutely. And I think she's really important too. I think she's really the reason why even the notion of science fiction is so expansive, because she comes out of this training of like hard sci-fi, which was like hard science, you know what I mean? Like a kind of Kim Stanley Robinson, like I talked to the NASA scientist who built the Mars machine, you know what I mean? That. She comes out of that training, but then was writing things like Kindred, which can't be explained. Like she can't even describe what's occurring. People are just moving through time. And I think that the innovations that she made on every level in terms of how she used the genre and pushed it, her along with Ursula Le Guin, I think, is like just crucial. And I just wish there were some more books to read.
Well, I wish we could continue our conversation, but Cauleen, thank you so much.
Thank
It's been
you.
a
Thanks for
pleasure.
being patient with me.